Now, the Human Rights Commission has found some Eastern Cape pupils' rights are being infringed. This is all based on school uniform policies, which we know are in place. Now, the Commission says this goes beyond being told what to wear. So let's find out what the problem is exactly. Joining us this morning is Dr. Eileen Carter from the Human Rights Commission. Good to have you with us this morning, Dr. Carter. So talk to us about the infringement of rights that the Human Rights Commission has pointed out. Which rights exactly are being infringed or are being found to be infringed?
Morning, Tamia. Morning to your viewers. Yes, we held this inquiry in the Eastern Cape, but we have made very clear recommendations and directives to the National Department of Basic Education. So these issues that we were dealing with is certainly not just ring-fenced to the Eastern Cape, but it has a national impact, because it is our view and our assessment and our findings that the rights of all of the children in South Africa are being affected. Now, in respect of the specific rights and the complaints that we have received and the evidence that we have available on the table, it indicated that there was perhaps an over-regulation of school uniforms in respect of the learners, as well as their appearances. Now, to just give you one or two examples, it would be to the extent where girl children, the color of their underwear would be prescribed. And it would be where specifically African learners would be subjected to what they call the two-finger test, where they would put, the teachers would assess the hair length, the afros of specifically African children. And then perhaps if it was too long, they would subject them to disciplinary processes. So those are just a few examples that we found has absolutely no place anymore in a democratic dispensation based on equality and dignity specifically, and that it did not serve to the best interests of the children involved.
There are some other issues, the other ones that you've pointed out now, but from the report that we've been looking at, it looks like the policing of school uniform is also under question, whether there should be girls' uniforms and boys' uniforms. But from what I'm seeing, you are recommending that there be quote-unquote, maybe genderless uniforms where one doesn't see that one is a girl and one is a boy. Could you clarify that for us, please?
It is our view that a non-binary or gender-neutral uniform be available within the available school uniform policy at the school. So ours would be, and currently the guidelines set out by the National Department in respect of school uniforms would determine arbitrary things that girl children would, for instance, not be allowed to wear shorts. Now, it is our view, and in respect and the context of the LGBTIQ plus community as well, that every school must just make available a gender-neutral school uniform or school uniform items from which children can choose to wear when they do attend school.
So you're not saying let's scrap school uniforms. You are saying let's make provision for those who don't want to wear a dress, for those who don't want to wear pants, then they can choose whatever it is that they want. And the school then needs to, within their school uniform guidelines, make provision for that.
Absolutely. Once you go through the Human Rights Commission's report, what we are saying is that the right to freedom of expression can be limited, because we feel there's value in applying a school uniform policy because of the socioeconomic conditions of our country as well. We found that it would simply not be plausible or a viable option to have children wear what they call civvies every day. The keeping up with the Joneses would be very difficult in our environment. But what we're saying is make available a school uniform that is representative and that allows for children who are perhaps gender non-conforming to choose any item of the available school uniform setup. So that for us is a way in which we protect the dignity and the equality of the children, because as the same with school hair policies, where boy children are not allowed for their hair to touch their earlobes. And our argument would be very simplistic in this regard, to say that longer hair does not affect the ability of girl children to do mathematics. Why would it affect boy children?
So, Dr. Carter, where are the parameters here? If a learner, for example, wants to wear green, orange and yellow long braids, some of it spiked with, holding gel and spray, because it's their form of expression. They are an artistic individual. Would they be allowed to do that within the recommendations that you are giving?
I think what we need to make clear is that the Commission is very specific to say that the policing of natural hair is a concern, specifically the policing of the natural hair of African learners. Accessories might be something else, and that the specific school can determine. But our baseline here is the Bill of Rights. Our baseline here is the Constitution. And what we are asking is that whatever school code of conduct or school uniform policy is applied, we are asking that it is aligned to the parameters of the Bill of Rights. So whether that is or not allowed, ours would be to test it, whether it would in fact affect the learner's right to access basic education.
What then is the next step based on your findings and your recommendations?
So ours was to say there are some policies that immediately needs to be abolished. One of them would be the policing of the underwear of girl children. We find it to be an absolute abhorrent practice. And if you just go on Google, you'll be able to see that a lot of public, private and independent schools still practice this. So that's an immediate reform we are calling for. We are also saying that immediately the arbitrary determination of the length of girl children, boy children, the differentiation there needs to be abolished. And certainly the over-policing of the hair of African learners. We say that a natural hair can in no instance determine a disciplinary process. So we are saying those are immediate reforms that are required. But also we are giving the department 6 months to have a look and audit the school codes of conduct and the uniform policies in their areas, to say that let's have a look whether these policies in fact align with the Constitution. We are asking that this audit be done, and also look whether there is a process for accommodation where children require to wear or want to wear religious or cultural expressions, like for instance the isipantla. So another request or a determination and a finding that we've made, and a directive that we've put to the department, is to say that they now need to go and make a determination whether there is not a request or an urgent requirement for a cap to school uniform costs. So that we have found is quite an impediment for access to education, especially also in the socioeconomic environment we find ourselves in. A lot of school uniforms are still require ironing. I mean, we are faced with load shedding on a daily basis, and then parents still need to go home, perhaps iron the 1 or 2 shirts that they have in the closet.
I must say,
it's something that we need to look at.
I must say, Dr. Carter, a lot of practical things that you looked at there. So thank you so much for your time this morning. That's Dr. Eileen Carter from the South African Human Rights Commission. One thing that is for certain, Gareth, is where do you draw the line? Yeah. And what is the level? Yeah. What is the barometer that you're aiming for, without impeding on the rights of children, but then the issues of discipline as well that need to be enforced, in regulations, being able to follow rules and being able to follow regulations, because it does somehow also groom you as an adult, because you are going to be working in a workplace. There is life outside of that school environment, and ultimately school is supposed to prepare you for the outside world.
Yeah, and you also don't want a situation where teachers are abusing that, and we end up with learners being abused as a result of those regulations not being put into place. We know how often that happens in this country.